Dr. Marjan Assefi asked, "Have you ever wondered how far we can push the boundaries of research before it becomes unethical?" This question is not just a philosophical musing, but a real issue that researchers grapple with every day. Imagine a world where research has no boundaries, where every question is fair game and every method is acceptable. It might seem like a utopia for the curious, a place where knowledge can grow without limits. But this world would also be a nightmare. Without ethical guidelines, research could harm individuals, communities, and even entire societies. That's why we need ethics in research. Dr. Assefi added, "It's a compass that helps us navigate the vast and complex landscape of knowledge. Ethics tells us which paths we should tread and which we should avoid. It's the line that separates responsible discovery from reckless curiosity. But defining this line is not easy. It requires us to balance the pursuit of knowledge with the respect for human dignity and well-being. It demands us to be critical of our methods and thoughtful about our impacts. This is the ethical conundrum that lies at the heart of research. In today's world, this conundrum is more relevant than ever. As technology advances, we have more tools and more power to explore the unknown. But with this power comes responsibility. We need to ensure that our research respects the rights and values of individuals and communities. We need to ensure that our thirst for knowledge does not lead us astray. This is not just a responsibility for researchers, but for all of us, because research is not an isolated activity. It's a collective endeavor that shapes our society and our future. So, understanding the ethical conundrum of research is crucial for everyone. As we delve deeper, we'll uncover the reality of these ethical challenges using real-life case studies. We'll explore the dark corners of research history, the controversial experiments, and the lessons we've learned. And we'll look at the present and future of ethics in research, the ongoing debates, and the emerging issues. Together, we'll navigate the ethical conundrum and find our way in the world of research. Imagine being part of a medical study, but never being informed about the true nature of your disease or treatment. That's exactly what happened in the infamous Tuskegee syphilis study. In the early 20th century, the U.S. Public Health Service, in collaboration with the Tuskegee Institute, conducted a study on the effects of untreated syphilis in African American men. This study, known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, began in 1932 and lasted an astounding 40 years. It stands as one of the most glaring examples of unethical medical research in history. The study involved 600 African American men, 399 of whom had already contracted syphilis. The remaining 201 were the control group. What makes this study infamous is the fact that these men were never informed they had syphilis. Instead, they were told they had bad blood, a term then commonly used to describe a variety of ailments. The researchers' objective was to observe the natural history of untreated syphilis. However, the men in the study were not given the choice to refuse participation. They were not informed about their diagnosis, the potential consequences of untreated syphilis, or the availability of effective treatments. Even when penicillin became the standard treatment for syphilis in the mid-1940s, the men in the study were not offered the antibiotic. Rather, they were actively prevented from receiving it. This was not only a violation of their rights, but also a severe breach of ethical standards. The Tuskegee syphilis study continued until 1972, when it was exposed by a whistleblower. The public outcry that followed led to significant reforms in research ethics, including the requirement for informed consent. This means that participants must be fully informed about the nature and purpose of the research, the procedures involved, the potential risks and benefits, and their right to refuse participation or withdraw at any time. The Tuskegee syphilis study had devastating consequences for the men involved and their families. Many men died from syphilis and related complications. Others suffered severe health problems, and some passed the disease on to their wives and children. The study's legacy is a deep-seated mistrust in the medical establishment, particularly among African Americans. This distrust persists today and can affect health-seeking behaviors and participation in medical research. Dr. Assefi added, "The ethical breaches in the Tuskegee syphilis study were profound and far-reaching. They highlight the absolute necessity for transparency, respect for persons, and informed consent in research. The study serves as a poignant reminder of the potential for abuse when these principles are not upheld." In the aftermath of the Tuskegee syphilis study, we
We must continually strive to ensure that such flagrant abuses of trust and violations of human rights never occur again in the field of research. We must remember that behind every data point is a human being with rights, dignity, and worth. This case study exposes the critical importance of informed consent and respect for persons in research.
What happens when we cross the line in the name of research? The Stanford prison experiment provides a chilling answer. In the summer of 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted an experiment at Stanford University to examine the psychological effects of perceived power. The study was designed to simulate a prison environment with participants randomly assigned to play either guards or prisoners. 24 male students were selected and divided into two groups. The prisoners were unexpectedly arrested at their homes, processed, and then incarcerated in a makeshift prison in the basement of the Stanford Psychology Building. The guards were given uniforms, batons, and mirrored sunglasses to prevent eye contact. They were instructed to maintain order and were given complete control over the prisoners, short of physical violence. However, the experiment quickly spiraled out of control. The guards began to abuse their power, subjecting the prisoners. When does obedience become a liability? The Milgram experiment sheds light on this complex issue. Picture this. It's the early 1960s, and Stanley Milgram, a psychologist at Yale University, is curious about the nature of obedience, especially in the context of atrocities like the Holocaust. He designs an experiment to test how far people would go in obeying an authority figure, even when it involves harming another person. In the experiment, a participant, known as the teacher, is instructed by an experimenter to administer electric shocks to a learner, an actor pretending to be a fellow participant, each time they make a mistake in a memory task. Unbeknownst to the teacher, the shocks are not real. The learner, however, acts as if they are, screaming in pain and begging for the experiment to stop. Yet the experimenter, acting as an authority figure, urges the teacher to continue. The results? A startling 65% of participants continued to the highest level of shocks, a supposed 450 volts, despite the apparent distress of the learner. This experiment showed the unsettling extent to which ordinary people are willing to obey authority, even when it conflicts with their moral compass. However, the ethical implications of the Milgram experiment are significant. The experiment involved deception, as participants believed they were causing harm to another person. It also potentially caused severe psychological distress. Many participants were visibly upset during the experiment, and some later reported feelings of guilt and anxiety. While Milgram argued that these effects were temporary, and that participants were debriefed after the experiment, the ethical question remains: was the knowledge gained worth the potential psychological harm? Today, such an experiment would likely be considered unethical under current guidelines, which prioritize informed consent, the right to withdraw, and protection from harm. Moreover, the experiment raises questions about the responsibility of researchers. Should they simply observe neutrally as their participants obey harmful instructions, or do they have a duty to intervene to protect their participants from harm, even if it means altering the course of the experiment? In the case of the Milgram experiment, these questions are not just theoretical. They directly impacted the lives of the participants, some of whom were deeply affected by their experience. This experiment serves as a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play in research settings and the potential for harm when these dynamics are not carefully managed. The Milgram experiment also highlights the importance of ethical oversight in research. Without clear guidelines and review processes, there is a risk that the drive for knowledge could overshadow the well-being of participants. This balance between the pursuit of understanding and the protection of individuals is a delicate one, and one that continues to evolve as we learn more about the complexities of human behavior. This case study shows us the importance of considering the psychological well-being of participants in research. But how do we ensure that such ethical breaches do not occur in research? This is a question that has been asked many times over the years, and the answer lies in the establishment of ethical guidelines for research. You see, in the aftermath of the horrific experiments we've discussed earlier, the scientific community and regulatory bodies have come together to establish a set of ethical principles to govern research. These principles are designed to protect the rights and welfare of research participants and to ensure that the knowledge gained from research is achieved in a manner that respects human dignity. The first of these principles is respect for persons. This means that researchers must treat all participants as autonomous individuals who have the capacity to make informed decisions about their participation in research. It also means that researchers must take additional precautions when working with individuals who have limited autonomy, such as children, prisoners, or people with cognitive impairments. This principle ensures that individuals are not merely used as means to an end, but are recognized as valuable contributors to the research process. The second principle is beneficence, which compels researchers to consider the potential benefits and risks of their research. The goal here is to maximize benefits and minimize harm. Researchers must design their studies in a way that the benefits outweigh the risks and that any potential harm is minimized. This could include physical harm, psychological distress, or even social harm like stigmatization or discrimination. The third principle is justice. This principle requires that the benefits and burdens of research are distributed fairly among all those who may be affected by it. For example, it would be unjust to conduct a study that only risks harm to a vulnerable population, while the benefits accrue to a more privileged group. Conversely, it would also be unjust to withhold potentially beneficial research from those who could most benefit from it. These principles are not just theoretical concepts, but are operationalized through regulations and guidelines that researchers must follow. For instance, informed consent is a practical application of the respect for persons principle. It requires researchers to provide potential participants with all the information they need to make an informed decision about participation, including the purpose of the study, what participation will involve, any potential risks and benefits, and the participants' right to withdraw at any time without penalty. Similarly, ethical review boards are a practical application of the beneficence and justice principles. These boards, often comprised of researchers, ethicists, and community members, review proposed research to ensure that it adheres to ethical guidelines. They assess the potential risks and benefits, consider the fair distribution of these, and ensure that appropriate measures are in place to protect participants. It's important to note, however, that these guidelines are not a one-size-fits-all solution. Ethical considerations can be complex and context-dependent, requiring researchers to exercise judgment and sensitivity. They're not just rules to be followed, but principles to guide ethical decision-making. So, while the history of research ethics might be marked by some dark periods, the establishment of these ethical guidelines represents a commitment by the scientific community to learn from these mistakes and strive for a more ethical future. With these guidelines in place, we can help safeguard the integrity and ethical conduct of research. These principles serve as a compass, guiding researchers towards ethical practices that respect the dignity, autonomy, and welfare of all research participants. Yet, the ethical landscape of research is ever evolving, bringing forth new challenges. As we move forward in the 21st century, contemporary ethical issues in research have come to the forefront. These include privacy concerns in digital research, ethical considerations around genetic editing, and the moral implications of artificial intelligence. Let's start with privacy concerns in digital research. The advent of the digital age has revolutionized the way we conduct research. With a few keystrokes, researchers can access vast amounts of data, which can provide invaluable insights. However, this poses significant privacy concerns. What happens to our personal information once it's out there in the digital universe? Who has access to it, and how is it being used? While it's essential for researchers to have access to data, it's equally crucial to ensure that individuals' privacy is not compromised. This delicate balancing act is one of the key contemporary ethical issues in research. Next, let's delve into the ethical considerations surrounding genetic editing. With technologies like CRISPR, scientists have the power to modify the genetic makeup of living organisms. This has immense potential for medical breakthroughs, such as curing genetic diseases or even increasing human lifespan. However, it also raises a host of ethical questions. What are the long-term effects of genetic editing? Could it lead to unforeseen consequences? And what about the possibility of creating designer babies, where parents can select their child's traits? While genetic editing holds promise, it also presents a profound ethical conundrum that researchers must grapple with. Lastly, we come to the moral implications of artificial intelligence. As AI becomes increasingly sophisticated, it's changing the face of research. AI can analyze data faster and more accurately than humans, leading to new discoveries and advancements. But this also brings up ethical issues. For instance, how do we ensure that AI is used responsibly and doesn't cause harm? What happens if an AI system makes a mistake? And as AI continues to evolve, could it potentially replace human researchers altogether? These are just a few of the ethical questions surrounding AI in research. In each of these examples, there's a common thread: the tension between the potential benefits of research and the ethical considerations it raises. As we push the boundaries of knowledge, we must also grapple with the complex ethical challenges that come with it. And these challenges are not static. They evolve alongside our scientific and technological advancements. This is where ethical guidelines come in. They serve as a compass, guiding researchers through the complex landscape of ethical dilemmas. These guidelines are not set in stone. They need to be constantly reassessed and updated to reflect the changing nature of research. They remind us that while the pursuit of knowledge is important, it should never come at the expense of ethical considerations. But it's not just about guidelines. Ethical research also requires a culture of integrity and responsibility. It's about fostering an environment where researchers are encouraged to think critically about the ethical implications of their work. It's about ensuring that ethical considerations are not an afterthought, but an integral part of the research process. In conclusion, the contemporary ethical issues in research, privacy concerns in digital research, genetic editing, and artificial intelligence are complex and multifaceted. They require us to think deeply about the ethical implications of our work and to constantly reassess our ethical guidelines. They remind us that as researchers, we have a responsibility to conduct our work ethically, even as we push the boundaries of knowledge. In the face of these new challenges, the need for ethics in research is more pressing than ever. So, what does the future hold for ethics in research? As we gaze into the crystal ball of research ethics, it's clear that the landscape is set to evolve. The future is not a static concept, but a dynamic, ever-changing entity, and so too are the ethical considerations that accompany it. In the future, we might have to grapple with novel ethical issues, many of which will be brought about by rapid advancements in technology. Imagine a world where we can manipulate human genes to eradicate diseases, or where artificial intelligence can make decisions on our behalf. These scenarios are not too far-fetched, considering the current pace of technological progress. Genetic modification research, for example, holds enormous potential to improve human health. But with this power comes immense responsibility. What are the ethical implications of editing the human genome? Who gets to decide which traits are desirable and which are not? These are questions that researchers will need to answer, guided by a strong ethical framework. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is another area that poses significant ethical challenges. As AI systems become increasingly sophisticated, they are being used in research to make decisions and predictions that were once the exclusive domain of humans. But what happens when an AI makes a mistake, or when it makes a decision that has serious ethical implications? Again, researchers will need to navigate these issues with care, ensuring that their use of AI aligns with the highest ethical standards. In addition to these emerging issues, some of the ethical challenges we face today will continue to persist. Issues such as data privacy, informed consent, and the fair treatment of research participants will remain crucial considerations. The digital age has made it easier than ever to collect and analyze vast amounts of data, but it has also raised new questions about how to protect the privacy of individuals and their information. Moreover, informed consent, the principle that research participants should understand and agree to the conditions of their participation, will remain a cornerstone of ethical research. As research methods evolve, ensuring that participants are fully informed and able to give their consent will continue to be a critical task. Finally, the ethical treatment of research participants will always be a pressing concern. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, we must never lose sight of the fact that research is ultimately about people. Ensuring that participants are treated with respect and dignity, that they are not exploited or harmed in any way, is a responsibility that will never diminish. But how do we ensure that these ethical standards are upheld? The answer, perhaps, lies in vigilance. We must remain alert to the potential ethical implications of our work, always questioning and scrutinizing our methods and motives. we must also continue to educate ourselves and others about the importance of ethical research, fostering a culture of respect and responsibility within the research community. We must also remember that ethics is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. What is considered ethical in one culture or context may not be in another. As researchers, we must strive to understand and respect these differences, adapting our ethical guidelines as necessary to ensure that they are relevant and applicable to all. In conclusion, the future of ethics in research is a journey, not a destination. It is a path that we must tread with care, guided by our commitment to integrity, responsibility, and the pursuit of truth. As we move forward, we must remember that the ethical conduct of research is not just a requirement, but a responsibility. In our journey today, we've explored the complex terrain of ethics in research. We've delved into the murky waters of ethical conundrums, examining past instances where the line between right and wrong was blurred. We've looked at the Tuskegee syphilis study, the Stanford prison experiment, and the Milgram experiment, each a stark reminder of how research can sometimes lose sight of its ethical responsibilities. We've navigated through the intricacies of ethical guidelines, understanding their importance in maintaining the sanctity of research. It's clear that these guidelines are not mere suggestions, but crucial parameters that ensure the dignity and rights of participants are upheld. We've also touched upon the contemporary ethical issues that researchers grapple with today, acknowledging that as our world evolves, so too do the ethical challenges we face. Looking ahead, we've considered the future of ethics in research, understanding that the field is not static but continually evolving. As we progress in our technological capabilities and broaden our horizons of knowledge, it's vital that our ethical considerations keep pace. We must strive to improve, to learn from past mistakes, and to ensure that our future research endeavors are rooted in respect for human dignity and rights. Today's discussion has been a reminder that ethics in research is not a peripheral concern, but a central pillar that upholds the integrity of the entire scientific enterprise. It's a complex, multifaceted issue that requires constant vigilance and proactive engagement from all stakeholders involved. So let's take this knowledge and apply it. Let's question, let's challenge, let's ensure that every research venture we embark on is guided by the principles of ethics. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about finding answers, it's about how we go about finding them. Remember, the pursuit of knowledge should never compromise the dignity and well-being of individuals. Because in the end, the true measure of any research is not just what it reveals, but how it is conducted.